This is for world history on April 27th, Monday. We are done with the Chinese Revolution. We're going to go to the French Revolution, which means we're going back in time a little bit. So we're going to do the causes of the French Revolution reading. Today there are two attachments. I could not get the questions to be on the same thing as the reading, so there are two separate attachments to your on-course classroom, right? So I'll read this, and then we'll go forward. King Louis the 16th became the French monarch in 1774 at age 19. He was an absolute monarch, meaning there was no restrictions to his power. He believed in divine right, that God gave him the power to be king. King Louis the 16th inherited a lot of debt from his predecessors. This debt increased when he supported the American colonists in their fight for independence from the British. The French and British were rivals, so Louis did not want the British to win the Revolutionary War in America. When King Louis the 16th realized how bad that France was, he was desperate to make up the money. Eventually, France became bankrupt from wars, the royal spending too much money on luxuries, and a corrupt tax system. Louis XVI tried to get the First and Second Estates to pay taxes, something they had not been doing, but they refused. The estate system in 18th century France was divided into three estates, kind of like classes that we have now, or in any other historical thing we've read. The first estate was the clergy, made up of church officials. This was a small percentage of France, making up only about 1% of the population. The clergy did not pay taxes and lived in luxury. They held important positions in France. The second estate was made up of the nobility, also known as the aristocrats. They made up about 2% of the population. They had almost complete authority over the peasants and were not required to complete military service. Most of the nobility lived in luxury and collected tolls from people to use roads and markets in France. The third estate was made up of the bourgeoisie, wage earners, and peasants. They made up the majority of the French population, about 97%. They were forced to complete military service and were not allowed to hunt or fish on noble estates. They had to pay taxes to their lord, the king, and the church. They were also forced to use the lord's mill, oven, and wine presses and pay taxes to use them. From 1787 to 1789, France had terrible weather, rains, hard winters, and 2 hot summers. This led to 3 very bad harvests, making life difficult for the country, where many of its citizens depend on agriculture and farming. Peasants and farmers ended up with smaller incomes as a result of the poor harvests. Food prices rose sharply, and farmers ended up losing their jobs. Many people starved, but the nobility continued to live in luxury as they had before. Louis XVI assembled the Estates General in May 1789, a group that had not met since 1614. The king called the people outside of the Palace of Versailles near Paris. He had a body of troops which many saw as an attempt to frighten representatives. 1,100 members or deputies from all 3 estates gathered. The king did not present proposals for discussion, so people had to come up with topics leading to chaos. King Louis XVI did not have control of the meeting. In June 1789, deputies for the Third Estate became fed up with the arguments and split off on their own group. They called themselves the National Assembly. They represented about 96% of the population and felt they were the true parliament. On June 20th, 1789, the members of the National Assembly met at the Royal Tennis Court. They pledged a promise called the Tennis Court Oath, agreeing not to leave until the king agreed to meet their demands. And the king gave way, and the deputies of the First and Second Estates joined the National Assembly. All of these events and circumstances led to the French Revolution that changed France. So there are multiple choice questions attached also. Please make sure you do those. If you just want to underline it or text box it, that's fine, whichever way you want to do it. Please remember that the third marker period is ended. We are now in the 4th marker period. All these grades will be in the 4th marker period. So I will see you tomorrow. Have a good day.